Back in 2020, I was in quarantine, just like you guys, and I was starting my senior year in the Zoom University, if you know what I mean. So I had a lot of free time, and I decided to spend this free time learning English, to improving my English. So I spent a lot of free time on these platforms. italki, Properly, Burpling, Halo Talk, these, well-known platforms on the internet for language learning. Anyway, the thing is, in one of these platforms, I met some girl from the States. And the thing is that she was learning Spanish and I was learning English. So what we basically did was this language exchange thing. And that's when I became a Spanish teacher. That's me in 2020, um, teaching Spanish. And I realized that Spanish is hard. It's such a hard language to learn, especially for English speakers, because Spanish is a romantic language and English is a Germanic language, and there are a lot of differences, especially in the grammar structure, in the parts of speech, in the words. In Spanish, the nouns has the gender, and English doesn't. There are a lot of different things between Spanish and English, especially the grammar structure. So, in these 2 years, because now it's November 2022, almost 3 years, when I'm recording this is November 22, and I spent all these almost 3 years learning how to teach Spanish to English speakers. And this is how you should learn Spanish if you are an English speaker, from my point of view, from my perspective and my experience. This is the guide, step by step. Before I take you to the step number one, I want you to know that you have to prioritize. Your main goal has to be communication over perfection. The main goal is communication, not perfection. I make mistakes in English all the time. I make mistakes in English in pronunciation. Sometimes I mess up with tenses, and it's okay because my goal was to be able to communicate my ideas in my target language. So, if you start with this mindset that your main goal should be communication over perfection, everything's gonna be easier. Okay, now let's go to the step number one. And the step number one is learn Cognates. And this is by far the first thing I tell my students. Did you know there are over 400 words with the same spelling and the same meaning both in English and Spanish? You know the grammar rules are different, of course, but there are a lot of similar vocabulary. For example, the word actor in English is actor, or the word agenda in English in Spanish is agenda. The word animal in Spanish is animal, or banana in Spanish is banana. So the thing is that English speakers already know over 400 words, and they don't know that they know over 400 words in Spanish. So this is a good start if you're learning if you're learning Spanish, sorry, from scratch. So learn the cognates. I have an entire list. My list has over 350. I will attach the link if you want to download the entire list, and it's for free, of course. Let's go back to the example. For example, the word alcohol. In English is alcohol, in Spanish is alcohol. What's the difference? The pronunciation. So that takes me to the step number two. Learn basic pronunciation. Learning basic Spanish pronunciation is so easy to learn. Seriously. Because Spanish is a phonetic language. It means that it only have one sound per vowel. It's not like in English that one vowel can have a lot of sounds. In Spanish, you only have one sound per vowel. For example, the word casa. Casa. The same sound over and over. The word cámara. 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 one sound per vowel, and that repeats over and over and over. Another good example would be that the H in Spanish is pretty much silent all the time. The word hotel in Spanish is not hotel, it's hotel, like the H doesn't exist. Hotel. Another good example would be that the double L in Spanish sounds like a Y in English. This word is not pronounced legar, it's pronounced llegar. Sounds like a Y. And seriously, learning the basic pronunciation of Spanish is so easy, and you can learn all of the basic pronunciation rules in less than an hour. I totally guarantee. And once you learned these sounds, you will be able to read an entire document. You may don't have any idea. You will not understand anything that you will read, but you will read it with a pretty good pronunciation. So this improve your reading, and when you already know these sounds, you are able to read anything in Spanish. Okay, that takes me to the step number 3, grammar. Yeah, I know, as I told you, grammar is the hardest thing of Spanish, but you don't need to learn all the grammar. You just need to learn the necessary grammar. As I told you, Spanish has 24 tenses. Imagine having 24 tenses. It's a lot to learn. In college, in high school, you learn any tense by tense, right? And as a native Spanish speaker, I tell you, I guarantee that there are so many tenses that we barely use. We barely use so many tenses. And you don't need 24 tenses to be able to communicate your ideas in Spanish. You only need 3. You only need 3 tenses. You only have to learn 3 tenses and 1 conditional. Maybe, yeah, 1 conditional. 1 tense for the present, 1 tense for the past, 1 tense for the future, and 1 conditional. You may wondering which are these 4 tenses, 3 tenses that you are telling us. Well, I tell you right away. These are the 3 tenses that you have to learn. By learning these 3 tenses, you will be able to communicate your ideas. I totally guarantee. And the tense for the present is el presente simple. El presente simple. The tense for the past, you will learn the pretérito perfecto. And the tense for the future, you will learn the futuro perfecto. This is the way how I teach my students. Because I'll tell you the reasons. The presente simple is this present simple that you learn in high school. You know, yo como, tú comes, yo soy, tú eres. It's like the present simple in English. I am, you are. That's the present simple, you know. The tense that you have to learn for the past is the pretérito perfecto. And you may be wondering why the pretérito perfecto and not the pretérito imperfecto. In high school, in any traditional language school, you will learn first the pretérito imperfecto. Why I'm telling you this? Because, see the difference. The first one is the pretérito perfecto. And the second one is the pretérito imperfecto. The second one seems shorter and easier, but that's not true. The easiest is the first one. I tell you why. You only need to conjugate 1 verb, and that's the verb to have, el verbo habere. Yo he cocinado pasta. That's one thing that you need to do. Conjugate the verb haber, and then you need to change the ending of the next verb. Seems hard, but it's not hard because it's a repetitive task. You do it over and over and over, and you do the same thing over and over and over, the same. And it never changes. And you know what? You know there are irregular verbs in Spanish. If you mess up by conjugating irregular verbs in the pretérito perfecto, it's all good. People will understand. But if you mess up conjugating irregular verbs in the pretérito imperfecto, I mean the second one, your sentence will make no sense. Because there are a lot of people, actually, they say, yo he imprimido, and imprimir is an irregular verb. But I basically hear all the time native Spanish speakers saying yo he imprimido, which is wrong, but it's accepted. So the pretérito perfecto will help you to avoid mistakes. And if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. For the future, you need to learn the futuro perfecto, el futuro perfecto, and the same thing, the same. They are futuro perfecto and the futuro imperfecto. But the futuro perfecto is easier because you don't need, it's even easier than the last one. It's easier because you don't need to conjugate the two verbs. You only need to conjugate one verb, and it's the verb ir. Yo voy, tú vas, él va. Yo voy a, I'm going to, right? And the second verb, you don't have to conjugate it. It's in the base form. Yo voy a cantar una canción. So you only need to conjugate one verb, and the second verb could be any verb, but you don't have to conjugate the second verb. So it's easier. It's so easy to learn, and the same as the first one I told you before, and the same as I told you before, this makes you avoid a lot of mistakes. Okay. Step number 4. Learn the most used verbs. Now you know how to conjugate, right? You know 3 tenses, and now you need to add verbs to those tenses to conjugate them. So in my opinion, there are 50 verbs, the most 50 most used verbs. I have a list, and I attach you again the PDF in the description. But in my opinion, these 6 verbs are the most useful verbs. The verb ser and estar, which is the verb to be. The verb gustar is to like. I like this, you like that. The verb ver, which is to watch, to see, to stare at. The verb hacer is the verb to make and to do. The verb tener is to have to. The verb querer, which is to want and to love in some cases. That's the step number 4. The step number 5 is speak with native Spanish speakers. Once you have learned the 3 verbs, the 3 tenses, and the cognates, and the most used verbs, you are able to speak with native Spanish speaker, and you can use the platforms I told you before. italki, Properly, Verbling, Hello Talk, or this is my new favorite, Tandem, which is a app for making international friends, and you can practice anything. You can practice any language here. It's so a good app, and this is not paid. I really like this app. And use Spanglish. Spanglish is low. We Spanish speakers, maybe we can't. Maybe we don't speak English like fluent English, but we understand English. We have some knowledge of English. We can understand some words. And if you don't recall a word in Spanish, you can say it in English. Seriously, you can say it, and then you have to learn the word. If you don't recall it, say it in English. Use Spanglish. And the last step, but not the least, actually, this is the most important step, is to have fun. You have to find a way how to have fun in this process, in this learning process. And this is up to you. In my case, I remembered I used to have fun by learning the lyrics of the songs I like and watching the TV shows I like, and having fun. It's up to you. You have to find a way, and you have to do this from the beginning. Okay, let's recap. Number 1, learn the cognates. The words with the same spelling and the same meaning. Number 2, learn just basic pronunciation rules. Number 3, learn 3 tenses: presente simple, pretérito perfecto, y futuro perfecto. Number 4, learn most used verbs. Once you can conjugate now, and you have to add verbs to conjugate them. That makes sense. Number 5, speak with native Spanish speaker right away with the apps I told you, or any other app you like. And number 6, have fun. Don't forget to have fun in the process. You have to do this for the beginning, seriously. And if you're watching this video, that means that I just launched my Spanish course for beginners, and it's totally free. Seriously, it's a free course. It's a free Spanish course just for beginners. So if you never spoken a word in Spanish, or if you want to learn Spanish from scratch, go to the link I leave you here. I attached the link below. It's totally free. So to finish, I want to thank you so much for watching this video first. And to conclude, I'm really glad that you decided to learn Spanish. It's such a beautiful language. Tú puedes hablar español. Nos vemos.